welcome to all of you on this beautiful sunny morning where we're here to remember and commemorate and celebrate the life of Elaine Cecilia Pfister Lewis. I want to welcome all of you. My name is Elder Jeff Lewis. I'm the second son of Brian and Elaine Lewis. And my wife Deborah and I are currently serving a full-time mission in Frankfurt, Germany. And we're so grateful that we could be back here to remember my mother and to see all of you. I'd like to acknowledge all of the friends and family who are here, and all those who are joining us on Zoom, via the Zoom broadcast. We're glad that we can have you with us through technology. I'd like to recognize also Brother Grant Rowan of the Spring Hollow Second Ward, counselor in the bishopric who is presiding. We will begin with a congregational opening hymn, number 294, Love at Home. Will be led with the chorister will be Jessica Winfield. And Lucy Mill going to accompany her. And I'll announce the balance of the program following the invocation will be given by Bob Carter, and after that I'll announce the balance of the program.
Love today as a family and as friends of Elaine. We're grateful to be her sons and daughters, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, and to have the opportunity to celebrate her life. We're thankful, Father, so much for the time that we've had with Elaine and the many blessings that we've had by being in her association and her example. We ask Thee, Father, that Thy Spirit might be with us as we give credit to the great things that she accomplished and the love that she showed. We ask Thee, Father, that from this day we might take a memory of the Spirit that we felt and also the example that Elaine gave to us. We're so grateful for all of our blessings and the knowledge that through the gospel we can be together throughout this life and throughout eternity. We offer this prayer unto Thee in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Bob. I forgot to announce Bob is the son-in-law of Brian and Elaine and married to Jenny, but in our family I don't like using the term in-law because I really feel like in our family there were no in-laws, especially for my father and mother. They didn't have daughters-in-law, sons-in-law. They were all sons and daughters, and to the sons and daughters they weren't mother-in-law and father-in-law, they were mother and father, and it's just a wonderful blessing that we had in our family. Just a quick word about the mission that Deborah and I are serving in Frankfurt. For those of you who may be considering now or in the future a senior mission, there's great freedom allowed to travel home for family events, such as funerals or births or other events. And it's even possible for one of either the elder or the sister to travel by themselves. So please don't let that be a deterrent from considering a senior mission. You can come home, even from Europe, for important family events. We're going to begin with a life sketch by Matthew Lewis, who's the third son of Elaine, be followed by Randall Lewis, who's the oldest son, Matthew Lewis, the middle son, and then Jason Lewis, the youngest son. Following that, we'll have a musical number from Deborah Lewis, who will sing Consider the Lilies. And after that, I'll announce the balance of the program.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. It's nice to see so many people I haven't seen in such a long time. Elaine Cecilia Fisher was born on December 30th, 1929 at Hollywood Hospital in Los Angeles, California, in the building that still stands there today. When she was 4, her father found work as a pressman at the Santa Barbara News Press, and Santa Barbara, California would be her home until she left for college. As an only child, Mom described her childhood as often lonely, requiring her to learn to entertain herself. Circumstances meant that she didn't have many toys. She had a pair of roller skates and a bike and an environment that allowed playing outdoors year-round, which was her #1 thing that she loved to do. She made friends readily, her first one being the boy across the street who was just 3 weeks older than her. Many hours were spent climbing the oak trees in his yard and playing in his basement. Her childhood was otherwise filled with days at the beach, car trips at the holidays to visit family in Van Nuys or Los Angeles, and fiesta in the summer. In high school, she was active in a cappella choir, French club, quill and scroll, the yearbook staff, played tennis, and said of herself, "I was good at school and I was good at sports." Also at that time, she became active in the LDS Church that her mother was a member of, attending the Golden Green Ball every year at the Veterans Memorial Building on Cabrillo in Santa Barbara. After graduation, her parents gifted her with a trip to Hawaii, where her cousin Marion lived, and she spent the entire summer there, meeting sailors every week at church and dating many of them. In the fall, she enrolled at University of California, Santa Barbara as a PE major. But motivated to get away from home, she dropped out after 3 semesters and worked to raise money to attend UCLA. Once at UCLA, she lived in Hershey Hall on campus and studied elementary education. She loved her college years in Westwood, and among the new friends that she made was Virginia Fowler, with whom she moved off campus and rented an apartment. Active in the ski club, she met two Norwegian boys there, Peter Wessel and Einar Hoven. She was interested in Peter and persuaded Virginia to come to an outing where she met Einar. That summer in 1952, after Mom graduated with a degree in primary education, the two couples married. With a California teaching certificate, Mom started teaching second grade in Manhattan Beach, while Peter continued at UCLA. After graduating, he determined to try finding work in Norway, and off he went. Many months later, after earning the funds to pay her way, Mom joined him there, but by then he had changed his mind, and after 2 months, he returned home to Los Angeles. Mom again lingered, having to wait for travel money. In all, she spent 4 months in Norway and loved it. She described herself as having a wonderful time there, visiting around the area and getting to know new family members. She learned to do needlework and bake delicacies, such as kransekake, and claims to have learned enough Norwegian to ask everyone to stop speaking to her in English. On her return to Los Angeles, she and Peter agreed they were not right for each other and began divorce proceedings. Peter played cricket on the Hollywood Cricket Club, and Mom, who sometimes served as scorekeeper, agreed to go to one more match with him, which happened to be in Santa Barbara. At the match, she met Peter's new teammate, Brian Lewis. Brian and Peter had a mutual interest in attending upcoming car races at Torrey Pines. And a few days later, Mom called Brian to tell him she and Peter were through, he had moved out, and would you like to go to the races with me? And they did, dating 2 or 3 times a week, deciding after 3 weeks that waiting a year for the California divorce was too long. In August of 1985, they drove to Tijuana and came back, Senor y Senora Brian and Elaine Lewis. And their 47-year adventure began. During their first year in Los Angeles, Randall was born. Next, Dad's career took him to San Francisco, where they bought a house in Palo Alto. Jeff was born. Nervous about Dad's immigration status, on Christmas Eve 1956, they went before a judge at San Francisco City Hall and got a marriage certificate they could read. Dad's employer assigned him to the Seattle office. They sold the house and moved to Bellevue, Washington, which would be our family's home for 17 years, the longest stretch in one place in her life. The rest of the 5 of us were born, and Mom became a homemaker. With a husband busy in civic organizations, service clubs, elected political office, and a career that included launching an engineering firm. Needless to say, it was a busy life. In 1964, after her father retired, her parents moved to Bellevue. And she was thankful to have them. They were a big help to her with the children. As the family grew, they lived successfully in 3 homes there. After a good year for the engineering firm, a cabin was purchased on 5 acres atop a bluff on Camino Island, where we would spend 5 nights a week in the summertime. Mom made many friends, found time to play tennis, and together with Dad, joined with other couples in a monthly bridge club, hosted JC get-togethers in our home, traveled to Europe and the Caribbean. But eventually, a turn of events in Dad's career would bring the Bellevue chapter to a close, and in 1974, the family moved to Wayne, Pennsylvania, into a 3-story house built in 1906 in suburban Philadelphia. Mom had a new venue, but already 2 children had graduated from high school. Dad focused on his work and limited his civic engagement, and the pace slowed down a little. Mom fell right into new friends and had her most rigorous church service as Relief Society president for 2 years. Another move came after 4 years to Little Silver, New Jersey, and a year later to Fairfax County, Virginia. Then, after another 4 years, finding themselves empty nesters, in 1983, they made a lifestyle move to Wilmington, North Carolina, where they built a home on the Intracoastal Waterway and stayed for 12 years, the second longest stretch in their marriage. Mom loved their waterfront home, enjoyed watching boats go by on the waterway, took classes at the local university, and volunteered at a museum. But finally, the lure of grandchildren had them looking west, and in 1995, they moved to Colorado, starting out in Metro Denver, but settling in Pagosa Springs in the beautiful mountains of western Colorado. Once again, Mom made new friends, volunteered at the Visitor Center, began to collect art and had frequent visits from children and grandchildren. Dad still traveled frequently for his business, but they began to include more leisure travel to destinations around the world and discovered that they enjoyed cruising. She was happy in a beautiful place. Then, on a Tuesday morning in September 2001, she awoke to find that Brian had passed away in the night. Now at 71, she began a new chapter where she would have to find her footing and carry on alone. Slowly she did, after a couple of years feeling sufficiently confident to make a move on her own. She chose Arizona, even spent a week there, finding a house in Fountain Hills. But alone was not going to be her status. That condition was dispelled when an old friend called. Einar Hovind, who had lost Virginia a year earlier, wanted to visit. Love was going to change everything. They married in a ceremony at Moby Dick's restaurant in Stearns Wharf in Santa Barbara. She was back in her beloved childhood home. Second love brought reinvigoration and seemingly even second childhood, as she tried new things that she had never done before, such as cross-country skiing at age 74. And roses seemed to bloom beneath their feet. Their 9 years together were such a blessing to her. I suppose we knew one of them would have to say goodbye again, and it would be Mom. Perhaps it was a little easier the second time. Surely she had no regrets. She wanted to stay in Santa Barbara, but soon began to feel out of sorts, only, for example, able to shop at Gelson's. Other stores feeling noisy and confusing to her. So she moved south to Carlsbad to be near Jenny and Mom, who were in Del Mar, and to a beautiful retirement community where she would enjoy several more sunny years with loved ones nearby. Advancing age would bring her here to Provo, Utah, where she would spend 5 years in an assisted living facility, beating the average there by 3 years. Finally, closing her eyes and slipping away a week ago. I am not able to picture her smile without hearing her laughter. Heaven now is a brighter place.
Wow, I learned a few things that I didn't know about my mom. That was great, Matthew. I want to get a copy of that. Okay, now, for the children. What is it? Okay. You remember, Grandma, they know her as Grandma. And that is how, well, she looked much better than me. If you look at your program, the picture in the program, that is how Mom looked her last few years. And she had natural hair, like in that picture in the program. But then, to maintain that appearance, she got these wigs. Always had the wig on. Mom always looked good. She looked amazing. She was always beautiful. It seemed to come naturally to her. She did have to entertain a lot. You see the photo over here that Jeffrey got in Seattle, in Bellevue. My dad being involved in politics. They would have politicians over to the house. They had fundraisers, and they had to entertain, and she had to dress up. But she had to do all that after taking care of us 5 children. You know, we'd be banished to the basement while they'd entertain upstairs. And I don't know how, looking back, I don't know how she did it. Just amazing. Well, as you heard, Mom was a teacher. She taught us. She didn't often have to raise her voice. Marcella, oh. Raising a voice, that comes from my dad, Brian. And unfortunately, I kind of inherited that. But Mom, she never really did. She was more soft-spoken. She taught us. You come And again, I just don't know how she did it. You know, as children, we spanned 8 years. She was always there. She was always ready to talk. I remember she let me make my own decisions, more or less, growing up. I didn't make many bad ones. And even when I did, my parents were good about that. I just don't remember having fights at all with my parents or hating them. I never used that word. Like you see on TV, kids, I hate my parents, I hate you. That never happened between me and my mom. She was a great grandmother. She was always available to help Hedy and I when we needed help, or if we were to go on a vacation. Those vacations are important. My parents, while we were growing up, they didn't do too many of these, but look how happy she is there. And I want my wife and I to have these moments. I want my children and their spouses to have these moments. They're so precious. I'm so thankful that after my dad passed, that she did find and get back together with Einar. They had, boy, wonderful 9 years. And I'm grateful to Einar and to his family, some of who hopefully are watching today. My mom was steadfast until the end. You know, many of you have visited her at Jamestown, and towards the end, she wasn't able to move as much. She was in a wheelchair, and I would go to visit her, and I'd find her sitting in her wheelchair. You know, earlier on, she'd be watching TV and she could change the channels, but the last few months, she'd be sitting in a wheelchair, just staring at nothing, or she'd be sitting in her recliner, just pensive. But she was never upset. She's glad to have visitors. She would always say, "I'm tired. Randall, I'm so tired. I just want to go." Well, but she never complained. That's all she would say. And she would listen to us, listen to me, talk about what was going on. She appreciated, the visitors, when my kids would visit. Once in a while, I'd take our little dog Jack to visit. And she loved Jack. Another thing about Elaine, she loved animals and made room for dogs in our home. But never complained. Sure, she wanted to go, and I know why. She was tired. She had so much to look for on the other side. One last thing I want to share with you. This is Mom's wallet. And kids, grandkids, you know how we identify ourselves, right, today? Benny has one, Lucy, I don't know what you got, some kind of ID card to start driving, right? This is Elaine, Cecilia Lewis. She has her insurance card in here, but she also has this. Many of you recognize this. She has her Temple Recommend, which she maintained. This one expired 2 years ago, but think about it. I know how she was 2 years ago. She maintained her Temple Recommend. This is how her Heavenly Father knows her. Her name is Elaine. He knows her. In heaven, we may have different names, because we probably had names before we came to this earth. Who knows? I'm not speculating, but she was welcomed home. You know, about 3 or 4 days before she passed, I took her hand and I said, "Mom, it's okay for you to go. There's lots of folks waiting for you on the other side." And she just looked at me and she said, "I know." You know, and it's probably the last meaningful conversation I had with her. But she had a testimony of the gospel, and I'm sure you all know that, and I want you to know that. She would meet with her bishop, she'd pay her tithing, have tithing settlement, and in the last year or two of her life, she wasn't able to go to the temple, but I just want you all to know that was important to her, and she has passed that down to us, and I'm thankful for that. And I appreciate having this time to share my thoughts.
Just as an aside, while I find my document here, I am not as good as Randall. I think I might have one time said, "I hate you" to Mom. It was on the Bunny Hill at Ski Acres, a ski area in Palmy Pass, when she had equipped me with a pair of wooden skis with cable bindings and leather ski boots, and was trying to talk me through doing the snowplow. I might have said, "I hate you" once or twice. Oh, and by the way, the second topic that I was asked to cover was a eulogy as Elaine as wife to Brian. Now, in the world today, when I hear someone marvel in amazement at a marriage that has lasted, say, 30 or 40 years, or a family that has 4 or 5 or 6 children, I like to smile and simply reply, "It's been known to happen." Recently, we've heard voices in our society calling for us to acknowledge and examine our privilege. So I did. And I quickly realized that perhaps the most important privilege that I've benefited from in my life is what I call the marriage privilege. My own marriage, now of 39 years. My parents' marriage of 47 years, till my father's passing. My wife's parents' marriage of more than 60 years. And every long-term marriage that's come before it. But these long-term marriages that are common, perhaps, in present company, aren't always the norm lately, and they don't come easily. They take work, they take sacrifice, and a willingness to put the interests of others before your own. And Mom exemplified that. When she first met Dad, she said that one of the things that attracted him to her was he had a lean and hungry look. And he was skinny, but I don't know if that's what she was talking about. Dad, of course, was not born in the United States. He chose the United States because he wanted opportunity. And he hit the ground running. It was a good thing Mom was attracted to that lean, hungry look, because he was a man with ambition. Mom may have had some of the leanings towards a stable, settled life that women sometimes prefer, especially when they have children. But she took on the challenges Brian's ambitions would bring right by his side. I'd like to mention a couple. First, it's been established that in the United States, immigrants are 3 times more likely to be business owners. And Dad supported that statistic when barely 5 years into his career, with a wife and 3 little children at home, he and a partner rented an office, hired 3 employees, and in his words, waited for the phone to ring. And it did. Of course, he did much more than just wait for the phone to ring. In 9 years, their firm grew into a building that Dad conceived and built, and having more than 50 employees. Along the way, political ambition also entered the picture. I mentioned earlier that a turn of events in Dad's career ended the Bellevue chapter. That happened when, after serving terms in the Washington State House of Representatives and State Senate, Dad was recruited by the Republican Party to run for Congress against a well-established incumbent in a Democrat-leaning district. And the only way Dad would do anything was by being all in. In this case, that meant selling his interest in the firm to his partner and signing a non-compete agreement with regard to the state of Washington with him. When the campaign was unsuccessful, that meant 2 years of uncertainty, and ultimately, in order to return to the work that he was best at, that he loved, relocating 2,800 miles to Pennsylvania. Ending up at senior levels in his industry meant butting heads sometimes with firm owners and partners. 2 more moves in the next 5 years would occur, and finally, once again, Dad would go to self-employment. It may sound like I'm talking about the wrong person at this point, but at his side through every change and challenge his career would bring was the loving and faithful Elaine, the ever-smiling Elaine, adapting to each new environment. Together they lived in 17 homes, 5 of them rented, 2 of them they built. 5 of them were waterfront homes. At one point when I was writing this, I considered entitling it Weather, Wandering, and Waterfront.
No, I don't want to.
She made a home out of each one of those 17 houses. But I'd also like to speak to one other way that she changed his life and subsequently all of ours. That began when once she was expecting her first child, Randall, she shared with Dad that in her youth she had been active in a church, specifically the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now Dad was an agnostic at that point. Not sure if he believed in God. But he was ready to take a look. And over the next 8 years, he would first determine that he did believe in God, and finally surprised her one day by asking her where his old cricket pants were. When you play cricket, you dress in white. Initially, after his baptism, their church attendance remained sporadic. In the old church schedule before consolidation, they would attend Sunday school in the morning, but would rarely attend sacrament meeting in the afternoon. Relief Society met on a weekday morning, and Mom rarely participated. But line upon line, they progressed. And in 1973, we traveled to Salt Lake City, and their marriage and our family were sealed in the temple. Over the years, Mom would serve as a Relief Society president, Dad would serve as stake presidency, and ultimately as a stake patriarch. And so, thanks to Elaine, we have our legacy of faith. A firm legacy of commitment to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And most all of us in this room have had our lives changed by that legacy. Often in my personal prayers, I thank my Heavenly Father that I am a member of the Brian and Elaine Lewis family. Thank you.
Hello. Well, I'm Jason, the youngest son. Like Matthew, I'm also going to speak a little bit about Mom in terms of her role as a wife, but also as a mother and a grandmother. All of you know Mom and her great sense of humor and all of her wonderful traits. So I'd like to name a few I think that helped her and that she exemplified for us, right, in the many roles that she had. She was very supportive. She had a great sense of humor, very adventurous, very patient, resourceful, and a wonderful conversationalist and listener. Kind of as Matthew mentioned, our father, Brian, very driven, very successful, and to some who didn't know him, maybe even intimidating. But in Elaine, he met his match, because she was the opposite. You know, she would never raise her voice. She always had a laugh, and she kept the home running, not just smoothly, but we all prospered.
And if you look at this picture, as Randall, I think, mentioned, that 5 children in 8 years. That's not easy. You know, some of you have done that or have been in families that come from families like that. It takes a toll. And as hard as Brian is working on his career, that's how hard Mom is working in the home. I remember, mentioning she's adventurous. She and Dad both. Matthew mentioned the cabin at Camino. I have so many great memories. When I think of my childhood, I think of walking the beaches of Camino Island and collecting driftwood and selling walking sticks and building campfires and roasting marshmallows. I mean, she made sure we had a wonderful childhood. She and Dad both. She was she's a wonderful conversationalist and listener. With all of their experience in the world and with Dad's career, her role as a hostess, as an entertainer, as a spouse and a partner, that she carried off flawlessly. We never saw her ruffled. She instilled in us great traditions. They both, Brian and Elaine, that was important to them. Family traditions, time together, holidays. I think you all remember the family reunions that was so important to both of them. And then with Dad's passing, the Mom carried on. Matthew mentioned the challenging time they had when they transitioned from the West Coast to the East. And they were separated for a period of time at that time with Dad out east. And I had an opportunity to scan some of their letters that they wrote back and forth at that time. And it wasn't an easy time. And Mom handled it like a champ and kept the family together. Even once we moved to Philadelphia, taking up part-time work, doing inventory for Levi Strauss, going around to the mall. She, with a smile, did whatever was necessary for the family. Their legacy of faith together. Matthew mentioned that trip to Salt Lake Temple. That wasn't just a trip to the temple to be sealed. That was a family road trip. I remember it well. Staying even in the Say Rancho Motel in Salt Lake City. Cockroaches in the bathtub. It was an adventure. But and that building still exists, the Say Rancho Motel. I think it's a different name now, but they shared that legacy of faith and instilled it in all of us. Mom, adventurous. After Dad passed, this is right after I had begun a career with the CIA, and life overseas was something I think that they would have loved to come and visit us and have these adventures with us. Dad passed in 2001. We went to the Philippines in 2002. Brian was born in 2003, and Mom came out for that. She spent a couple of weeks with us, and I remember great travels with her, taking her out to Corregidor Island. And one of our fondest memories of Mom at that time is her phone calls with Einar. That's where we got a little preview of the next chapter in her life as a soon-to-be spouse to Einar. And she carried with her at that time, that great sense of adventure and tradition and conversationalism, and just being a great spouse and partner with Einar. Einar and Elaine then came to visit us when we were in Morocco, and we really got to know them as a couple and see how they complement each other and how they enjoyed each other's company. And again, always setting an example for the children and for Einar and his family. Modeling that what a healthy, great relationship looks like. So grateful to her for all her example throughout her life, all these great traits that we now see in each other. And I'd like to share also a note that Cindy Hogan, because she wasn't just a wonderful mom and grandma and great-grandma to the Lewis family, she became a surrogate grandmother and mother even in the Hogan family. And Cindy was so kind as to send a note, and I would like to read that to you all now. She says, "Hello, Elaine's loving family and friends. I am Cindy Hogan. Elaine's stepdaughter from Portland, Oregon. Unfortunately, I could not make it here today because of a recent knee surgery, so instead I sent this note to pay tribute to my wonderful stepmom, Elaine. Elaine and her family have been part of the Hogan family since she and my mom, Virginia, were roommates at UCLA in the late 1940s. There, Elaine introduced my dad, Einar, to my mom, and the rest was history. As my family grew up in Santa Barbara, Elaine's parents, Cecilia and Frank Pfister, who lived there too, were like grandparents to us. We spent many birthdays and holidays together with them. Such loving and fun people to grow up with. So when Dad told us that he and Elaine were getting married after both had lost their spouses, it seemed like a natural union. Over the next 9 years, until Dad's passing, they enjoyed a wonderful life together in Santa Barbara, filled with traveling and loving support from their combined family and friends. For me, Elaine was more than a stepmom, she was a wonderful friend. After Dad passed away and Elaine moved to San Diego and then Provo, Utah, she and I would periodically talk on the phone and catch up on how her bridge games were going, what books we were reading, and how our families were doing. Our talks were always filled with laughter and good cheer. We always signed off with loving words. Towards the end of her life, the phone calls were fewer and far between, but not a day went by without me thinking of her. When Jenny wrote to me and my siblings and me, telling us that Elaine's time to leave this earth as we know it was near, I was filled with sadness for her pending passing. When we heard that she had passed that Thursday afternoon, I was filled with peace and gratefulness, knowing that she was surrounded by her family, who truly loved her and adored her as she transitioned. To have held space for her to die peacefully and surrounded by love is not only a gift to her, but also to those who loved her. I love Elaine. I miss Elaine. May she find peace and happiness in her heaven, surrounded by those who arrived before her. With love, cherished memories, Cindy. You're like you can sign my name. I think most of us can sign our name for you now. Thank you.
this program, someone suggested that Deborah sing Lilies of the Field. My immediate reaction was, that's not fair. She sang that song over 20 years ago at my father's funeral. And I thought, ask her to do it again. How could she possibly hold up emotionally? Thank you so much. Thanks to all those who shared words with us. We'll now proceed as follows. We'll first hear from Jenny Carter, Elaine's only daughter, and then from Marhelia Lewis, who will represent the daughters who came to Elaine later in life. Following that, we'll have grandchildren remembrances. In some cases, one grandchild will represent the family. In other cases, we'll hear from multiple grandchildren. We'll go in order of age, hearing first from the Randall Lewis grandchildren, then my grandchildren, then Matthew, then Jenny, then Jason, and then I'll offer some concluding remarks, following which we'll have a congregational hymn, How Great Thou Art, number 86, and a benediction by Austin Lewis, Elaine's oldest grandchild.
Does anybody need to stretch? Anybody just want to stand for 1 minute and just stretch? Thank you. I really feel blessed to have been born into the Brian and Elaine Lewis family as well. And I think our family is so unique in society, today's society, and to see this group of people that love each other and get along with each other and have learned so much from them. I think it's especially fitting that 1 week from tomorrow is Mother's Day. I've been thinking about what a great mother my mother was, and that's what I want to talk about today, and hopefully I have some stories for the kids that you'll appreciate. But as I was thinking about Mother's Day, I came across this quote that says, "Life doesn't come with a manual, it comes with a mother." And I really think that that's true in my case. And I was thinking about what I could say today, and I just thought of 5 things I wanted to thank her for. There are many things to thank her for, but 5 that came to mind. And first was, as has been mentioned today, for setting the example of being a kind person, for teaching kindness by example. As you've heard, she did this by rarely raising her voice. I can't actually even remember a time when she raised her voice. I do remember her saying, "Jennifer Elaine," but I don't think it was really more than that. She did this by never speaking ill of anyone, by modeling service, by maintaining a cheerful demeanor, and by being the soft counterpoint to our father. And I think, like Randall said, some of us inherited a little bit more of our father than our mother. And I apologize to my children. I can relate with Marcella, apparently. But one story I wanted to share that punctuates this kind nature was just told to me by my friend Kara Quinn, who lives down the street, who had grown up in Castle Pines and was in the same ward with my parents for a little while, and then she lived down the street from me in Belmont. So whenever my mom came to visit, Kara came and visited, and she said that, she sent me this text. She said, "Jenny, I'm heartbroken to hear about your mom. Please know I'm thinking of you and all the wonderful smiles your mom has brought to my life over the years. One of my favorite memories was when I came to your house in Belmont and she helped me fix a sweater that had some threads that had come loose. She worked on it for quite some time. After she fixed it, I asked her if I could pay her, and she looked straight at me and said, 'No, Kara, I am way too expensive.'" And then I wanted to share a few remarks one from her niece and one from her nephew. And I want to thank Lydia for representing their family here today. But my cousin Diana was invited to our family reunion, and as you see, we're a big family. And this was a few years ago in Midway, Utah. There were over 40 people there. And she said, "When I first saw you all upon my arrival, Auntie Elaine ushered me to sit next to her and made me feel so loved and welcome. She made me feel special among so many Lewises. She is a wonderful auntie. I will always cherish your mom and her kindness." And then my cousin Nick sent the following remarks. She said, "Your mom was such a warm individual who always put others before herself. I'll always remember her, not least for introducing me to the humble but delicious joy of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on Camino Island when I visited in 1971 as a 10-year-old. So apparently that didn't exist in your household, Lydia. She said, "Elaine was also very kind to our dad when our parents were going through their difficult divorce a few years later." So that's the kind of kindness that people remember her for. So I thank you, Mom, for teaching me by example how to be kind. The second thing I wanted to mention was I want to thank her for teaching me to be an honest person. And she did this by instilling some lessons in me from a very young age. And the earliest one I can remember is when I accompanied her to the grocery store, and we were going through the checkout aisle, and like all grocery stores, there's a row of candy right behind the checkout. And while Mom was putting the groceries up, I snitched a roll of Lifesavers. I put them in my pocket. We went home. I went straight to my closet where I began to eat them. Well, of course, as parents know, when you don't hear your child around, you know something's up. So she came and she found me. She took me straight back to the grocery store, to the same checkout aisle, had me apologize to the clerk, and had me pay for those Lifesavers. And then another story I remember from my youth is going to the Bellevue Library and checking out books, checking out picture books when I was little. And as all kids do, sometimes you accidentally write in the library books, sometimes you accidentally rip pages in the library books. Well, she took me back down to the library, to the counter, had me apologize, had me show them where I had taped them together, and that made me respect things and not do that anymore. She also would take me in and have me pay any late fines. As a mom, you're busy, you could just run in and pay those fines yourself, but she had me go in and pay those late fines. So I want to thank her for teaching me from an early age some lessons about honesty. But in addition to character traits like that, I wanted to thank her for modeling homemaking skills and talents. She sewed, she knit, she canned. We had canned peaches, applesauce, pears, prunes. We always had some canned fruit with every meal growing up. And I don't know, like Pamela said, how she did that with 5 kids at home, how she had time to do all that canning. She quilted, she knit, she made us matching mother-daughter dresses at Mother's Day one year. She sewed a dress for the first prom I went to when I was living in Little Silver, New Jersey. She knit my children baby blankets and Christmas stockings, and she sewed play dresses for my girls. And I want to thank her for signing me up for a sewing class at Stitch in Time. That was the name of the store in Bellevue, Washington when I was 10 years old, and making sure I learned how to sew. And I apologize to my girls for maybe not doing so well with that. And fourth, I want to thank her for being an example of service. She was there for the birth of every one of my children, not for the birth, but there after the birth, and stayed and cooked and cleaned and took care of any other children I might have had. She enabled me to be able to visit them. When Bob was doing his training, money was tight, we never went on any trips. She would help with plane tickets so that I could bring the kids down and visit her in North Carolina. And pampered me when I was there. She would send anniversary checks so we could go out to dinner on our anniversary. She would send C's candy in the mail at holidays. She would pay for gas and groceries when she would come to visit. One big service that she provided, when Bob and I lived in Baltimore and she came to visit and she saw that Roach Motel sitting on the kitchen counter, she offered to pay for Terminex treatment every month for the rest of the time we lived in Baltimore. But even though she pampered me in those kinds of ways, I really credit my parents for not spoiling us. I don't think any of the kids in our family would say that they were spoiled. I remember one year wanting to go to youth conference, And it didn't cost much to go to youth conference then, but they wouldn't give me the money to pay for it. They said I had to earn it. And I didn't know how to earn money as a 14-year-old. I had 4 brothers, I wasn't a babysitter. So I sent out, made up a little flyer, handed it out to the people at church, and the kind people at church paid me to teach their children how to swim in our swimming pool in our backyard. I'm not a swimming teacher, I didn't know how to teach them to swim, but I made a little bit of money to go to youth conference. And then the summer I wanted to visit my best friend Allison Conger, who lived in Bellevue, Washington. Again, instead of giving me the money to go fly and visit her, she and Dad encouraged me to come up with ways to raise the money, so I put an ad in the paper to clean houses. A few people hired me, and I cleaned houses that summer until I had enough money to buy that plane ticket. So I'd like to thank them for teaching me important lessons like that. And lastly, as already has been touched on, I want to thank her for maintaining her devotion to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Both she and her mother were the only members in their family and in their marriage for quite a while. In my case of my grandmother, my grandfather never did join the church. But I'm grateful that my father did join the church, but I'm most especially grateful to these 2 strong women who held in there. They held in there, and that's why we're here today. So I want to thank them for creating our eternal family. And I just want each of you, especially grandchildren, to think about how one person can change so many lives. She wasn't a president of anything. She didn't work at any corporation. She didn't get a paycheck, but she's changed so many lives by the way she lived, and I'm eternally grateful for that. Thank you.
Was it 40 years ago? 40 years ago. We went and picked up Mom and Dad at the airport, and we went to a pastor for Nicholas and I when we got married. I remember her. She just gave me a hug, and she cried. And Grandpa was there. It's hard to talk for me about Grandma without Grandpa. Because they were, I mean, they were just wonderful. It was just the best thing that could have happened. When my parents were divorced, and my dad was the best, but he had a problem with drinking. And I didn't see him much, and I found the support and Dad figured that I didn't have at home. And Mom was so kind. I told her, I said, when we went to get Mom dressed at the funeral home, I said, I don't know how your parents, how Mom and Dad felt when they told them that. When Randall told them, Mom, I'm going to marry a girl that she just got baptized. Her best was evaluated really bad. Her parents are divorced. And she's older than me. So now I'm the oldest grandmother. But she was Dad, Mom, now I am. Mom or Dad never ever said anything. Once Randall said something like, send her by the green card, and then Grandpa turns to this, Randall said, Russell was born when I had a green card. I wasn't a citizen. And then Dad turns around and says, you did too. Because Grandpa was... I never felt intimidated by Grandpa. I just loved him. Maybe because he was, I wasn't that, he wasn't so old for me. Anyway, there's so many things. I hated to see Mom old. I hated to see her going down. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about how beautiful she was when she was young. I'm sure you were old too. You know, I remember we had Natalie, and she came over, and I wanted to make strawberry jam, but I couldn't go. So she just rolled off her pants, took them out, and there she goes. Brings everything, she does it for me. When we first just got married, I was pregnant with Russell 3 months, and I had to take a test to get a driver's license here in the States. I flunked 2 times, and Grandma Harris said, "Hey, she would take me again." Russell, she would have gone by dive first, I finally passed. One of the best memories was that we went to visit them at Pagosa Spring. It was just such a beautiful spirit in that house. I loved it. And we took Mickey. I don't know if anyone remembers Mickey, our dog. When we got it, it was this little dog. And he grew up, and he turned out to be a monster. A big, crawling, kind of intimidating dog. Anyway, so we took him to Pagosa with us. It was the 4th of July. There we go. So at night, all the fireworks and all the noise. The dog went crazy. And he just ran to the mountains and he got lost. So the children were really sad. I wasn't so sad, but they were. They made flyers, they put it everywhere. So the dog was gone. I'm so sorry. So we went home. 2 or 3 days later, Mom, with the dog. She had scratches on her arm that the dog had, fodder, because he had an abscess on, they had after in the butt, and we had to do surgery on him and the whole thing anyway. So he wasn't feeling good. He was all burned, his paws, from just running around on the street, hungry, thirsty. Mom picked him up, nursed him, and brought him home. I mean, she was so neat. I always felt accepted and loved. And without them, it's like Jane said, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have the gospel in my life. I would have a beautiful, beautiful family that you guys are. I'm forever grateful to my Father that I never had so much. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ.
Okay. So, I'm Russell Lewis, son of my mom, who you just heard from, and Randall, who opened up. I don't have a wig to wear right now, but I'm super grateful to be here with everyone, and was really excited to see everyone. And I'll be brief with my comments here. When I was thinking about what to share, the word that just kept coming to me is that Grandma was so adventurous. And it's evident why, by all the stories that you've heard, right? And hearing her stories of growing up in Santa Barbara, traveling all over the world, taking on these different challenges and chapters in her life, she's done it. And one of the recent memories I wanted to share with you guys of when I took my family to go see her when she was in Jamestown. And I always kind of felt like I was overwhelming her when I bring my kids, because you can see they're a little much. But we do it anyways and say, hey, we're gonna go see Grandma. And this time around, I thought, we're gonna kidnap her, throw her in the van, and take her to the top of Squaw Peak and show her an adventure. And I proposed it to her, and she was like, okay. And I, took her out, put her in the van, we drove to the top of the mountain. It was a weekend night, and it was very busy. There were all kinds of kids and music going on. But she came, she hopped out of the van, she wanted to go to the edge and look over the edge, and I was like, Grandma, no. I didn't want to be the one that, accelerated this. But she just she is and will always be an inspiration to me, of someone that just makes the most of life and really loves everyone, and I'm grateful to have had her and continue to share with my family.
All right, are we gonna go back?
Yeah, I guess. So I guess unfortunately my mom told the story that I was hoping to tell about Mickey. But I remember she, in Pagosa, when I was a kid, she had a cat that lived under her porch. And she named her Blackie. I remember she had to take her to the vet in case she was pregnant. And I guess they did whatever they do so she can't have kids again. But I always admired that with her with animals too, like how she loved animals. And I remember how much she loved Mickey, her and Grandpa. They would take him on walks whenever we visited Pagosa. But I just like, one thing I remember, is her kindness. She was very kind. She was always kind to me. She always, if there was something she disagreed with me that I said, she wasn't afraid to tell me about it. Like if I put something on Facebook or just in person. But I also like it how here at this funeral I can feel like she's still around. And she always had this light inside of her that I loved too. And yeah, I wish sometimes Grandpa was here too, but I know he's in a better place and she's with him. And yeah, that is all I can say.
I have to clarify, I live in a big house, so I lovingly holler at my children so they can hear me. But no, I definitely take after Grandpa and my dad more than wonderful Grandma. So much to say about her, but I will keep it brief, and I'll just say two quick stories about. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to share my children with her, and I still remember announcing my pregnancy to her, and she just was so excited, and she goes, "I think I want to be called Gigi." So, and I love that she was thinking of a few names, and then I was like, "Oh, you're changing your name?" And then I realized, "Oh, great grandma," you know. So she is Gigi now to me and in our home. And I was grateful to have her come to our house one time, and we were asking her questions about her life. And she told me about how she went to UCLA and she was part of the ski club. And I thought, where do you ski in UCLA? And her eyes lit up and she just started laughing and goes, "They would put hay down on the side of the hill and we would just send it. We would go." So we all got a laugh out of that, and I could imagine it, and that's another adventure. And then the other one was, I had taken my 5 children to Seven Peaks Water Park down in Provo. And we were on our way home after a long day, soaking wet in the sun. And as we were headed home, we saw the Jamestown bus. And the kids were like, "Hey, that's Gigi's bus, you know?" I said, "That is Gigi's bus." I was like, "Can anybody see her on there?" And then we're all looking, and there's quite a few white heads on that bus. And my Brigham was adamant that he saw Gigi. "I see Gigi, I see her, I see her." I couldn't see her, but I thought, okay, let's surprise her. Let's beat the bus back to Jamestown. So we raced the bus, not hard to do, but we passed the bus, parked, got out, went and sat down on the bench, and anxiously waited. We were so excited for Gigi to get off that bus. Sure enough, the bus pulls up, and we're sitting there excited, soaking wet in our swimsuits. And she gets off the bus, and to just see her eyes, and you can all see her eyes now light up, and what accompanies the eyes? The laugh. She just has that laugh. So we were just excited to be with her and to surprise her. And she sat out on the bench with us and talked with us for a while, and I'm just grateful for her love and excitement for life and so much more, but she was a beautiful, beautiful woman inside and out, and I love her and this wonderful family. Grandma bought us our first Happy Meals. It was epic. It was just the first time. I remember she rolled up to McDonald's because they were out of town, and we were like, Grandma, we've never had one. And you could tell her, the look on her face was like, that is so lame. And so we each, it was Aladdin. It was Aladdin themed. And we each got a Happy Meal. What I love, she took life seriously enough, but never too serious. And I guess instead of a memory, it would be what I hope to remember about her. She kept it fun. It was fun, and no problem was ever too big. I remember if I was stressed about school or anything in college, or there was a problem or I was failing something, it was kind of just like, on to the next. You know, she never sat and thought like, oh, this is so hard. What did you do? Oh, this is terrible. It was just kind of like, oh, let's fix it, and we're on to the next. And it was wonderful. And I guess once, I wasn't planning on sharing this one, but my 2 front teeth are fake. And I chipped them, and I had a bad dental job done, and I guess she thought that I didn't smile enough, or I would talk like this. It wasn't why, I didn't even notice I did it. She was just like, why are you talking like that? I said, I don't know, I just am. So the next day in the mail, I get this check, a very large one, to go get my teeth done. And so I called her and I was like, Grandma, you don't. And instead of, I was calling to say thank you, and she knew that, so she just cut me off, and she goes, but we can. She just hung up the phone and said, okay, we can. And I did. And so every time I go to the dentist, I think of Grandma. But she also, the last thing I'll share is visiting her in Jamestown. I had 2 young kids at the time, and they were just on her floor, making a mess, being loud. They were just babies crawling. And I was trying to talk to her, and I thought I know she wanted to talk, but she's also tired, but she shushed me and kind of told me to stop talking. And I was like, okay, you know, like, I'll stop. And she's like, I want to watch. And she pointed to my kids, and she watched. We sat there for quite a while, and she was just smiling, and she was watching my kids. And I didn't say anything, and I was watching her instead of my kids, because she was just happy. And that moment taught me everything of how she values family, and I'm just glad she gets to watch. That's it.
It's not even enough. All right, well, I'll be speaking on behalf of all the Jeff Lewis, all 3 of us. I didn't think I was going to be so emotional, but I think that my first thought when I got the email through Jenny that she was in her last days was almost like a relief. I was glad that finally she's going to be able to rest. Each time we've seen her over the last few years, she just seemed sadder and sadder and just more tired. And that's not really the grandma that I remember. So I'm glad that she's free from that. And so I'll just share just a few things. A lot of talk about Grandpa Brian, who passed away. So he passed away in September 2001. I had been on my mission in Guatemala. I got there just a few days before. And I guess it was enough of an incident that they were able to call me on the phone. So as I'm on Guatemala, Grandpa passed away before I got home from my mission. She had already got married to Agnar. And so just part of her adventurous spirit, like she's just on to the next thing. So I left on my mission with one, Grandpa came home with. And a lot of people mentioned, I remember her being just so warm and cheerful, and I remember her laugh that people mentioned. And Jenny, when you were speaking, I thought you have the same voice and the same laugh that she does. And I just want to talk about her legacy too, with all these grandchildren, all these great-grandchildren, and I'm sure more great-grandchildren to come. I remember telling her about 10 years ago at one of the family reunions that, Grandma, you have a 30-year-old grandson now. Is that weird? And so I turned 40 last summer, and so now she made it to a point of having a 40-year-old grandson, which is pretty impressive, I think. But I think all these cousins that we have, I know like there's a big age range and we're all scattered across the country, and I might not know all the details of everybody's lives, but I was just thinking that this is my grandma that I have this relationship with, but she's everyone's grandma, right? It's Laura's grandma, it's Russell's grandma, Matthew's grandma. Each one of us have these stories about her. And I'm so glad that we had so many family reunions, because those are sometimes the only time that we get to see her, especially once you're married and older. You don't have, especially us, we haven't lived in Utah or, in San Diego where she was, so we didn't get to see her except for those reunions. But I'll close with just a story from one of the biggest influences she had on me is, I grew up in this family in the Mormon church and going to BYU in this very right-wing political bubble, right? And so it's 2007 and I'm graduating from BYU, and if you remember at the time, Dick Cheney was our vice president, and he was the commencement speaker at my graduation. And I didn't think much of it, but I remember the night before, Grandma was there, and I remember her saying, "Oh, I hate that man. He's such an awful man." And I don't remember if she even went. I think she was considering not even going to the service because she could not stand Dick Cheney. And it was like an eye-opening to me, like, we can think for ourselves. I don't have to be part of this, hardcore Republican right-wing bubble. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was just like this light bulb went off for me that, like, well, not everyone thinks the same way. People can have their own ideas, and so that's one thing I'll remember about her, that she wasn't afraid to be different. Especially hearing about, Grandpa, being an elected member of the Republican Party running for office. So that was just an example to me of that free spirit, and probably today it's not too controversial to say that, but at the time he was the current vice president. So I'll remember that about her, and I'll share one more story that I thought about that I remember when Natalie was talking. So back when Macy was born, we got pregnant in 2007, at the end of 2007. I remember calling the insurance company. I just started my job, fresh out of college, dirt poor, living in the Bay Area, California, very expensive, having not much money, calling the insurance company just saying, "How much is this baby going to cost?" That was back before you had these high deductible plans, you just pay like a copay. They told me it's $1,000. So we saved up $1,000. Then Macy's born in 2008 in July, and a couple days after she was born, I called them back and said, "Just want to confirm it's going to be $1,000, right?" I said, "No, that was last year's price. In 2008, it went up. Now it's going to be $2,000. And so that was like a lot back then. Honestly, it was devastating. Like, I don't know what we're going to do. No idea how I'm going to cover that extra $1,000. And then the very next day, in the mail, out of the blue, came a card from Grandma, congratulating us on Macy's birth with a check for $1,000. Supposed to be for her college savings. Which I think, if I remember now, I was able to figure it out. But to me, it was just too much of a coincidence that the day before, finding out I got this whole, and then the next day getting a check for the exact amount from Grandma Lewis. So I'm grateful to her, grateful for the memories we have, and I'm grateful for everyone else's words too.
Me, I get to go first. So as you're aware, Calvin is unable to join us in person today, and he sent me the remarks that he wanted to share, and since he's not here, I'm going to read them first. for us. He says, I'm very grateful for Grandma's positive influence on my life. She was always very supportive and excited for the things I was doing for her son. And always had some encouraging words to say to me when we would talk. When I would think about Grandma, one of the first thoughts that comes to my mind is the value she placed on family. The family reunions will always hold a special place in my heart. I'm glad that her and Grandpa Lewis made them a thing. How many people that I know or have met have as good relations with their extended families as we do with ours. It's very special to me to have that relationship with all of you. And I give credit to Grandma and Grandpa for creating and maintaining something very special. I also admired Grandma's sense of adventure. One of the last times I saw her, I helped her climb up into my 4Runner, Calvin's the love of his life, and drove her around town. He didn't write that. And drove her around town to get a California burger. I was excited that she was willing to go out on an adventure around town. If you don't see many grandmas her age riding around big 4Runners, they're probably just as, if not more exciting for me to have her ride with me than it was with her. Grandma was beautiful and special, and someone that we should all strive to be like. Sorry, I'm used to talking to construction workers. So I wrote some comments as well that I wanted to share. But like many of you, I will remember Grandma as a source of light in my life. She was always happy and full of joy whenever I was around her. I remember her laugh and the love that she had for us. I remember her laughing just because of how happy she was. I will especially remember her laugh whenever Elaine would be walking around the house whistling, and how frustrated she would get sometimes. The memory that I wanted to share with Grandma as well as calling her after with news of my divorce, and was surprised when she told me that it was great news. I didn't know that's how she felt. It was not what I was expecting to hear from her. I was expecting more sympathy. I certainly did not feel like it was great news at the time, but she had wisdom from life experiences and knew that this was an opportunity for my life to become better than it had previously been. I wish I could tell her how correct she was, and thank you for the advice at the time. I'm proud to be part of the family that Elaine and Brian created. I'm honored to carry on the legacy that she has left behind. And I hope our reunion someday will be a joyful one.
I feel like I could just echo so many things that people have said already about Grandma's spirit of adventure, being so adventurous and loving family and being so happy. I love the example she set with her happiness all the time. And being able to go to all the family reunions and how important family was to her, and I'll always cherish the memories that were made at all of the reunions over the years, as well as being able to just visit her. I'm so grateful that we've always lived somewhat close to her to be able to visit her at all of her homes in Colorado and California, and well, especially love visiting her in Santa Barbara, which I really love. It's like, I'm so grateful that her love of Santa Barbara was passed on to me. It's one of my favorite places now. And so anytime I visit Santa Barbara now, I'll always be thinking of her when I go there. And
Okay. Grandma had a way of making me feel seen without pressuring me to be anything other than who I am. In this big family full of so many wonderful people, she made me feel special, and I've always been so proud to share her name, have her name as my middle name. When I was younger, I went through this phase where I decided that my favorite animal was a cow. And Grandma heard about that somehow, and so for years, for birthday or Christmas, she would send me cow-themed things, but like extravagant, like this cow hat that had a long tail that I wore skiing, and this like cow visiting the Eiffel Tower keychain, and then this ceramic birthday cow that says "Happy Birthday to Moo" that we have on our table for every birthday. I actually just ordered another version of it on eBay because my kids broke it. But I love that she thought was thinking of me. And when I was a toddler, I called her Grandma Luli because I couldn't say Lewis. And for my entire life, every time she wrote me a birthday card or an email or anything, she always signed off as Grandma Luli or even just Luli. And I'm just so proud to be part of her family, to share a name with her. And I'm always telling my Elaine, Lainey, that Grandma Elaine is where she got her name, her fashion sense, and her love of chocolate. My Elaine, when she was 2, sniffed out this wrapped in cellophane box of See's chocolate under my bed. She managed to find it, and I just knew that we had passed on the love to another generation. I will miss her, but I'm so excited for her to be with Grandpa again. And
I'm Jessie. I feel really grateful that for a lot of my adult life, I've been near Grandma. I lived in Orange County for several years when she was in San Diego. I've lived here in Utah for the last couple of years while she's been down in Provo. And I was looking through some of my emails with her. A lot of them, most of them just have the subject line "Hi," where it's like a couple things she wants from Trader Joe's, or things that I could help her with. But there was one email where I had sent her a note just saying how grateful I was for our family, and she wrote me back. She said, "I want you to know how much I treasure my wonderful, beautiful family. I'm especially grateful for the spirit and closeness they all share. They have turned out better than I ever could hope for. And I'm so grateful to be part of this family. I know that's true, that she just loved us so much, and she's so happy for how we've turned out. And I hope to be able to have that kind of love for my posterity too." There's a couple things that Grandma said on Monday. The week that she passed away, I was able to go down there and spend some time with her with Naomi. She was coherent and also maybe hallucinating a little bit, but there were a couple things that she said that I wrote down. One was, "People keep bringing me flowers and nuts, but if they brought me candies and chocolates with a really smooth, soft center, then I could eat those." So I brought some chocolates today to share with you all, so we can have those after this. And then another thing that she said, after I had brought Naomi to sit by her on the bed, she said, "The view from right here is beautiful." I think of Grandma fairly often. Anytime I have a day where I eat a lot of sugar, I remember how often she used to tell my mom I was going to get diabetes. And another memory I have of her is Jessie, before her mission, had deferred for a period of time, and I remember this gathering. I feel like it was at Randall's house, but I remember my mom saying, "Oh, what are we going to do with all these mission clothes, these skirts that I just bought her?" And Grandma goes, "Just hem them shorter." I just love Grandma. I feel like in recent years, more of my memories of her are through my own mom. And one thing that I feel really proud of that you've always told me is that I have the same sense of like thinking everything is the best. Like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. And apparently Grandma was very much like that. And I'm proud to have her as a part of me. But I love all of you. I love her so much. I love this family. And I'm grateful, like Laura said, that she's with me.
I'm just going to share one story from one time in high school, I would always like cut my hair short like this and then grow it out pretty long and then cut it. My mom would nag me and to cut it short again. And one time we went to visit La Costa Glen, and I think my hair was pretty long. And my mom had been nagging me during the week to cut it. And then we got there and we were visiting Grandma, and Mom was like, "Don't you think Ethan's looking girly? Like, he should cut his hair." And Grandma was like, "No, I kind of like it." And then Mom just shut up about it. But we also had Maddie and I are at BYU right now, so we had the opportunity the last 2 or 3 years to always go and visit Grandma every couple months or weeks. And just the week before she passed away, if any of you have visited her recently, you know, like when you go to say bye and hug her, she'll just like reach up her arms and give you a hug. And that just was so beautiful. I got to do that one more time before she was passed away. And I know she wants to hug everyone. I just love her so much.
You can understand.
I thought it would be kind of hard to think of things to say about Elaine since I'm her youngest grandchild. I've known her for the shortest time, but I've been blessed to live near her for like the past decade or more. She was only 20 minutes away from us in San Diego, and 5 minutes this past year at BYU. And when we lived in San Diego, we would have her over for dinner or go to dinner with her at La Costa Glen almost every Sunday. And if we couldn't make it to eat with her, she would always ask for In-N-Out or Habit Burger. And I've noticed over the years that every time I visited her, she would always tell me how handsome I was or compliment me in some way. And she just always made me feel so good about myself and loved, which is something I really admire about her. And I hope I can emulate that attribute of hers in my life.
Guys, it's hard to last. When I think of Grandma, I think of the last 5 years when I really got to be close to her here in Utah. I remember leaving grad school, I'd go grab her favorite In-N-Out, she still loves it, and just go chat with her and hear about what activity she did that day or how school was going. She was just always the most, like even toward the end, like the most positive and loving and funny person. A lot of those conversations she would eventually ask me about boys, and I remember telling her eventually about Palmer and just being like, I don't know, this might be the one, but it's only been a few months. And she's like, it worked for me, you know, like, okay. So it was just meant a lot to me that she was able to like get to know him over the last few months, and I'm just so happy that she's able to walk and run and be with Grandpa again.
I'll start out by reading my little brother Brian's on his mission in Thailand right now, so I'm just going to read some thoughts from him first. I think that Grandma Lewis is an incredible role model of how to live life to the fullest. The things of greatest value to her were the most important things. I never doubted that she loved me or cared for me. I can remember living overseas and talking to her via FaceTime on her iPad. She always wanted to see how we were doing and loved hearing about our lives. Every time we would go back for the summer and visit, I'd prepare myself for a good 2 to 3 hours of just sitting, visiting, because talking to those she loved is what brought her the greatest joy. Even as she got older, I never doubted how much she thought of us. She'd send the occasional nonsense message in our family group chat on accident, but that was because she was reading it and trying to respond and just couldn't get the hang of her iPad yet. I'll miss her. Each time we'd say goodbye to her after our summer visits to go back home, often in another far-off country, I'd just be so sad. Inside, I'd always wonder if I'd get the chance to see her again. Well, now I'm in a far-off country again, and it's happened. She's passed away, but I know I will see her again, so I have no reason to be sad. I love my grandma, and I can't wait to meet again. And then I guess I'll just follow up, inheriting my dad's. I should have looked at him. My dad's, I'm moving on his side. Ethan touched on what I wanted to talk about very briefly, was just how much I loved greeting her, or just seeing her, and the hugs and the fun-loving noises, whether it was a or an oh or a light chuckle when you would go and give her a big hug. And that's what I remember and miss most about her.
All right. So when I think of Grandma, I think a lot of family. One of my most favorite memories of her recently is we were all here for Christmas visiting Rachel in Utah, and we all got together to celebrate her birthday. And it was a surprise to her, and we all just kind of showed up. And I remember sitting there with her, and I was like, Grandma, like, how are you doing? Because there was a lot of people there. And her response, I was expecting, well, like, I'm tired or something like that. And she said, I feel wonderful. And that has always stuck with me, how we were all, she just thought we were all wonderful. And yeah, well, we're alive. Okay, great. When I think of Grandma, I guess today I just want to share like 2 stories. I was able to also be close to her these past couple of years, which has been so great. And one of the highlights of living close to her is we can go visit her and talk to her. And I personally just love wearing outfits with a lot of color. And so I would go sometimes to visit Grandma, and one particular occasion I was wearing coral pants, a blue checkered top, and an orange elemental sweater that was really big. And I felt really confident in it because I love color. And Rachel was not optimistic. She was ashamed to hear me. But I walked in and I asked Grandma, what do you think of my outfit? And she just was quiet and just kind of nodded and then was like, She didn't say anything like bad. She just was like, like, and she is a woman of excellent taste and everything. She says now, I think, what would Grandma wear, right? Would she approve? But that became a highlight of mine, is having my outfits approved by her. And I would, whenever she loved it, you knew she loved it because she would just compliment you. And she was always a woman of, a grandma of just positive words and uplifted everyone around her. And one of the special moments last week on Tuesday or Monday, being with her, she was still coherent, and I asked her again. I was wearing green pants, a purple top, like party bags. I thought it looked good. But she was there, and I was trying to think of what to say, and I was just like, Grandma, do you love my outfit? And I stood up over the bed, and she just, her eyes wide open, and she said, oh gosh. And I was like, yeah, I still have work to do. But And it was just really special. The Thursday that she passed, I had plans. I knew she wasn't doing too hot, and I was my coworkers on a call, and I had told them, and they were like, "Mary, you should just drop everything and go be with her." And I'm so glad I did, because I picked up sandwiches, and I got there within 30 minutes before, and she had passed. So I got to be with her, and it was just really special, and I just was filled with so much gratitude for her body and for the life that it gave her to do all the beautiful adventures she had in the family. And I know she's just so happy right now, and that I just can't wait till we're all reunited one day and have one big Lewis family reunion again, and we can see her eat all the best gourmet food. I love it. And those are the things I love about Grandma, and I'm so grateful to be her granddaughter and be in this family.
What a family. Thank you, all of you. I'll be very brief with my remarks. I share with you my very last memory of my mother. I started off by saying there are no in-laws in our family. Monday of last week, which was just 2 days before she passed, I FaceTimed her from Germany. And Jenny was with her, and Jenny answered. And Jenny was next to her. She was lying in bed, and she was somewhat coherent, not completely, but a little bit. And I was talking just a little bit with Jenny and with me, and Deborah was in the other room. And there are only 2 of them in our apartment. And after we'd been talking for a few minutes, Deborah came, and she came on the screen. Mom just raised up. She said, "Deborah." She didn't do that for me. But I completely understand. Two quick other remembrances. Growing up, I can't count how many times Mom said to me, "If you can't say something nice about something, don't say anything at all." I can't say I lived by that, but she did. And I can never remember her ever saying anything bad about anyone or anything, with 2 exceptions. One I just learned about, Dick Cheney. And the other one was the food at Jamestown. As I was growing up, as Randall said, I never made any serious bad choices. But I went off to high school where there were no other members of the church. And so my friends, as we got into later high school years, got into marijuana and beer and alcohol, and we all hung out together, and I never participated in that. I always said to myself, what would my mother think? And I never wanted to do anything that would disappoint her. And that helped me greatly. In closing, I just want to say a few things about Mom as our mother Eve. In the temple we learned that Eve was so named because she was the mother of all living. Mom is our Eve. She is the mother of most who are living here. In the book of Moses, it tells when Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden. And it says, "In that day Adam blessed God and was filled, and began to prophesy concerning all the families of the earth, saying, Blessed be the name of God, for because of my transgression, and I don't think that's correct, I think you should have said because of our transgression, my eyes are opened. You should have said our eyes are opened. It was Eve who led the way. And in this life I shall have joy. We shall have joy. And again in the flesh, we shall see God because of Eve's decision. And Eve, his wife, heard all these things and was glad, saying, were it not for our transgression. She said our. We never would have had seed, and never should have known good and evil. And the joy of our redemption, and the eternal life which God giveth unto all the obedient. And Adam and Eve blessed the name of God, and they made all things known unto their sons and daughters. Because of the decision that Eve made, we were all able to be the children of Adam and Eve. Because of decisions that Mom made in leading Brian, and her deciding to return to the gospel, and leading Brian into the gospel, we're all blessed to be here and to have our legacy in the gospel. And I think there's just something about the closeness that we have in spirit with our Heavenly Father that is a blessing to all of us. And my mother had was truly a blessing, and I thank her for that. And I thank her that she made all things known unto her sons and daughter. All things in righteousness. She set all of us on the covenant path. And we're so blessed by that. I know that she now is back with our Father in heaven and His Son Jesus Christ, and with Brian and her family members, and waits for those of us to join her. And I know that we too can have eternal life with her. And because of her. And because of our Savior Jesus Christ. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be gathered here today. Grateful to celebrate the life of Elaine and the legacy that she left, and we're so grateful to be a family, and thankful for the blessings that we all enjoy because of her and her life and her example. Very thankful for the ability to be sealed as a family forever, and we are grateful to all those who are able to come, and we ask you to bless the food that we'll be having here, and bless that we'll all be able to maintain the spirit and the legacy of Elaine in our lives, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.